Good morning, good afternoon, good evening all, it's Bear here. And I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, aboxwithnolid. A channel I'm creating not just to bring the awareness around the realities of complex trauma, but I'm really trying to get into the day-to-day understandings and its impacts and how it creates so much of what we do and why we do. To help you guys improve the quality of your lives, but also how to make the most of the resources you have to heal. Now, this is a follow-on again from the last video where I was talking about the narrowing of our worldview, that narrowing the cope, the feeding of the structures, our defensive structures of our survival state. And this one, I want to bring in a little bit more in depth in one particular aspect of it. And I must warn, it is a triggery aspect. And it is something that is very, very common. It is something that we find very challenging to look at, even when we're just quietly looking at it ourselves, because it becomes so fundamental. And that is the belief aspect post-trauma. When we go through significant traumatic experiences and we get to the point of day-to-day functionality as much as or as best as we can, and we start to re-engage a little bit more in the world, when we start to, try to move past, try to bury the memories, try to change back or become what trauma took become the person we were before we went through those experiences, or become the person that those traumatic experiences prevented us from becoming, if you're looking at pre-verbal early childhood. It's the beliefs. If I have this, or if I can find this, or if I can do this, get this, know this, understand this, then I will fix everything. This is the most common component that I've ever come across in the belief systems of those that have gone through significant trauma. There is always one point or one facet from our traumatic experiences that we latch onto so that we can prevent them from never happening again. For some, it's if I learn to fight, if I learn to become angry, if I learn to be able to be that enforcer, I will never go through that again. You see that a lot with bullying. You see that a lot with where there's a lot of physical abuse. If I can learn to physically defend myself, if I carry a weapon, if I can do these sorts of things, then it will never happen again. We try to find ways to prevent what happened to us from ever happening again. I've touched upon this in other videos, but I want to go into more specifics here. Another aspect, like to put it into a personal note, for me, my entire life, if I understood why I wasn't good enough for my mom and dad to raise me, because I'm an adoptee, why I was taken, these why questions that were all narrowed down to the simple emotional thing of my mother never held me. But all these growing complexity of questions that come from that being in a box in a room, abandoned, freezing cold, and all the other aspects that happened to me in my very early childhood. That shaped the question of why. And that question of why has separated me from everyone, because it's fundamental. Every person or everything that comes in your life goes through that filter. And if it cannot answer why, then it goes to one side. And there's a mechanism that we create that becomes so embedded that we have no ability to control it. It just happens. And I've noticed that a lot when I look at people that have gone through significant pre-verbal and early childhood. The why question separates us so much from the physical world, not just people, but the physical world in general, our own physical body. And that is a belief. That is a belief system that we've created that is as powerful as believing in any God or any deity. It's as powerful as believing that the next breath you breathe in is not poisonous. It is so non-conscious, it is so fundamental, and it is so core that if we're ever going to heal from trauma, we need to understand the beliefs that we've created to cope and survive. We need to understand the questions that are at the base of those beliefs and the choices and the decisions that we have made as a result of those questions. And they all come from the process of we are trying to prevent what happened to us from ever happening again. That is all we're trying to do. And there are better ways, and without threatening the very structure of what we are. And our beliefs are at the very core, and we need to tread gently with this. Because, like in anything, there's a scale of severity. And some people's beliefs are, there's a couple, and they're not as poignantly pointed. But when people step into more defensive structures, when people step into I have to protect more aggressively, when there's self-medication and these other components that are a part of that belief, or when they've been molded by religions or by groups of like-minded trauma sufferers and all of that, it becomes a very touchy place to be. Because it's not only when you start to question these beliefs and try to work with them to change, you're also isolating from every association of others that are part of those beliefs. You know, particularly, I'm thinking along the lines of when people go through significant, domestic abuse. There's all these groups online of men and women that have gone through forms of domestic abuse, supporting each other, which is great, but they also create a lot of beliefs around that. And those beliefs become almost like a fundamentalist religion that limit. And if you try to question those beliefs, even part of that group starts to turn on you because you're challenging their survival structure. And it keeps you embedded into a pattern of negative self-reinforcement. They're not helping us, but we also need to understand that we're not wrong for creating them. It is a natural process. What happens, it is naturally what trauma creates when it is unresolved and when the society around actively ignores the consequence of trauma. But if we're going to heal, within ourselves, we need to understand the rules that we've created in our survival state. And a large basis of those rules are the beliefs that we have. Shame and lack of self-worth are very simple terms that get thrown around a lot, but they are a key component of the belief systems that our survival state has created. And they are a result of what we're trying to change because of what we've been through. And part of the belief systems that we create when we step in, when others prey on our circumstance and give us, they're basically trying to recruit us to their agenda by aligning us with all the negativity that we feel to bring that into a point that they can use. Now you see this on the extremists, you're looking at, the fundamental religions, you're looking at fundamental terrorism. But you're also looking at gang structures. You're also looking at addiction structures. You're looking at many facets of our society, all the extremists in religions, Christian just as much as every other. They prey upon our need to find a solution to be safe. They prey upon our survival state and feed in these beliefs. So we need to be vigilant, we need to be mindful, and to do that we need to simply be aware. And that takes time. Like I have spent decades gently pulling apart, sometimes not so gently, pulling apart the belief systems that I've created to try to cope and survive, to try to move past my trauma past, to try to move past its consequences. Only after a cycle of sometimes years for it to all collapse and feed back into that beginning point again. And I see that happen so often. And the bulk of that is around the belief structures that we have and how they're not a living ecology. They're a rigid set of rules. We are a physical living being. The world is a physical living world. The ecologies that grow things for us need to be living, not fundamental ruled. Everything in our society that has fundamental rules is not living. And you look at it. You look at what it does. It doesn't grow. It doesn't go healthy. It doesn't expand. It consumes and eventually ends. So we can learn from this. But first we need to be aware. And that is the basis of this channel, is I'm just trying to bring the understandings of what trauma has changed from a lived real world perspective. I'm not going to throw all these fancy psych words at you, but I'm trying to bring it down to a day-to-day construct so that it becomes real. As real as possible, so that you can go, yes, I do this, now I know why. Now I can put this into a place where I can look at it and make the changes that I feel I wish to for my own well-being. Not because Bear says, and not because anybody says, and not because the world dictates you should, but because you choose for your own well-being. So take a moment, breathe, and over the coming weeks and months, take a little bit of time on a regular basis to look at the beliefs you have. Look at the questions that you've created around your past and how they have shaped your beliefs and the pursuits that you have in your life and world. And grow from there. If they are a benefit, you feel they are for you, good, awesome. If you feel I can do a little bit better, or I need a little bit more, or I don't like this consequence, how can I make it work better for me? That's why I'm making this video. So as always, I love your guys' comments and feedback. Please be mindful, please be safe, and I'll see you all next time.